Good morning, Game Master. It is a beautiful spring day here in Alberta. Snow is almost gone, and the Canada geese are back. So watch out. Get your sword and shield ready for those creatures. Uh, I just want to do a quick walkthrough of an article that Paul Quarles had sent to me. And Paul had read this article about my method that I call sandboxing. And so my ideal campaign structure is one part sandbox, one part hex crawl, and then one part story path or just path. And so I merge sort of the best of or the elements that I like of each campaign type, and that's how I run my campaign. So the players have agency to do what they want within the campaign region. That's the sandbox. The campaign region has unexplored areas, even unexplored to me, the GM. So that's the hex crawl portion. So we get to dynamically decide what are in those empty squares at start or as the characters venture into them. And then I have a plot line that runs, usually headed by a villain. And if the player characters do not choose to engage with the plot line, no problem. I will run it in the background, incrementing it as game time increments, and then trigger basically campaign background events caused by the villain, which often spills over into the encounters and situations that the player characters find themselves in. So even if the player characters decide, we're going to reject the plot line, it still kind of comes to them once in a while. And then at any point, the player characters can jump into the plot line where it's currently at, saying, okay, I've had enough. Let's deal with the villain. They are a pebble in our shoe no more. And that's great. Now they're jumping into the plot line, but it's optional. And that's my ideal campaign structure. That article is linked to. Paul mentions it here at the top, and you can find it there. So, anyways, Paul then said, hey, I love this approach. I'm going to use it for my own campaign, and I'm going to document what I do. John, here's the document. Thank you very much. And I said to Paul, wow, this is a really great walkthrough. Do you mind if I put it on role playing tips? And so here we are. And I just wanted to create a short video on this for TLDR reasons. And if you haven't had a chance to read the article and you can only watch a video right now and come back to the article later, this is a quick walkthrough. So Paul starts with grabbing a picture from Earth with all the terrain intact to give him an instant map for the campaign region that has some really detailed terrain features on it. And it just takes some moments to screenshot, find a place on Google Earth or wherever he's using to grab an Earth map from, and then screenshot it. Then he rotates it just to disguise the region from the player characters. Most players, I doubt, will be able to find a spot on Earth unless your map, you've chosen, has a really recognizable feature on it, like the Grand Canyon or something like that, or a well recognizable sea. But by rotating it, it further obfuscates it from the player character. So that's a cool trick. Then he puts a political map on top of the screenshot of Earth that he's rotated. And so his campaign is focused on the kingdom of Thailandgard. And so that's square in the middle of this map here. And then he has drawn in political boundaries and then thrown in some neighbors around it. Again, all layered on top of the fantastic geographical features he got from the Google's or from Earth's map that he screenshotted. So then he zooms in and he creates basically a milieu map for his primary campaign region, which is the Kingdom of Thailandgard. So here now we have Thailandgard, the city of Thailandgard, a square in the middle here, and then he started to add in other locations in the zoomed in version of the map. We can also see that in the campaign region, there is a river that's leading into a sea here or a lake. I'm not quite sure the scale here. And then, zooming in, we can see more and more features, which will help him describe and flesh out the campaign region. So then he grabs a hex grid and overlays it on top of his milieu map. So then he adds at the top a column of labels, so letters A through Y in this case, and then numbers along the vertical 1 through 25. And so if we look at Thailandgard, I'm not sure exactly what hex is on this screenshot, but I believe we're looking at L, and going up. L6 would be, what I would code into Campaign Logger as the location of Thailandgard. I would use the hashtag L-06 and then type in the word Thailandgard, and that would be my page or tag name and Campaign Logger for that. So now we have an instant referenceable grid for our campaign region, done in moments. And then Paul goes to incarnate and grabs this hex and goes deeper and zooms in one level and is now using incarnate to actually start to detail the adventure sites of a small region, one of the hexes on his map. So here, for example, we have Ogre Cave in basically location 10. And so we can see on his incarnate map, there is a little hole there. This is the GM map, by the way, not the player map. We have a lair entrance in the label 10. So now we have, growing depth, zoomed in level of what's happening nearby where the characters will adventure. Then Paul goes to this site here, which is Mathplate. And I hadn't found this and known about this site. So thank you for making me aware of this, Paul. So we go to Mathplate, seems to be a safe site as far as I can tell. Scroll down a bit and he's got direct link to the hex graph paper generator. You can configure it, amazing tool, and then just download. Fantastic. And so it does other graph paper as well. You can see at the top some of the options. Looks like a very useful site to bookmark. So then he prints that out and starts noodling on a deeper level of hex hex contents. So he's basically zooming in on this particular hex here, G16, adding tiling guard, and so on. He then builds out the locations and what's happening in those hexes. He uses a book called Filling in the Blanks, which is on my shelf as well, by Todd Lebec. And then he starts filling in what the features are in this hex. So it's a bit confusing, but we are, if you're not following along here, but Paul has created basically nested tiers, like Russian dolls of hex maps, which is the primary thing I wanted to call out. Very cool. So now we are at the very smallest level here for the players to decide where to go on a day-to-day basis for their characters. And using Todd Lebec's system, on a post-it note, he started documenting basically the features and layers of each hex within this small region. And I'm not sure the scale here, but he's got a 6-mile scale. And I believe what he's saying is that within this 6-mile hex, the major hex here, are these locations, the 5 features and the 5 layers. Then he populates that from a book that he uses from Castle Crusades, basically your monster guide and rolling randomly of what's in there. And then he goes back to incarnate. So basically he's using this graph paper step to quickly ideate and kind of get things sorted out in his head without trying to tinker with an application at the same time. That is a perfect flow. If you're trying to map at the same time you're using a mapping application, it seems to go 5 times slower than if you just on paper or on a device sketch out rough thumbnails of things, and then once you've got positioning, size, and major details sorted, you then start drawing your final version in the app. It seems to go much better that way. So he returns to incarnate and starts documenting all of these locations, these adventure sites for the player characters. And then finally, he prints it all out into this epic printed map that he has scissored into very cool hex shapes and sizes, glued it together. And now his players at the game table have a printed version of the region, friendly and all behind the scenes, all keyed and ready to go. And so, yes, very good article, very good workflow for creating your own Sandcrawl. And so thank you, Paul, for sharing your flow with us and doing the screenshots and documenting your step-by-step. Very much appreciated. Role-playing tips Game Master. I would advise reading the Sandcrawl method article in full. And I hope this video walkthrough was of help. See you later. Bye-bye.